So now it's time for the next slot here at the MariaDB Server Cloud MiniFest. And with me here I have Sudhakar Sannakkayala from Microsoft. You're on the board of MariaDB Foundation, right?
Yes.
And we very much appreciate that. So what's your position at Microsoft?
I'm the head of engineering for open source data services in Azure, which is the Microsoft Cloud.
Okay, so that is a very clear description of your responsibility, and it sort of also explains how MariaDB comes in. Or would you like to elaborate on the role of MariaDB for your responsibilities?
Yeah, Kai, my team is responsible for enabling platform as a service for all open source databases. So we support MariaDB and also other open source databases as well. So MariaDB is one of our marquee service, and a lot of customers and developers building interesting applications on top of MariaDB, and they're asking for more capability in the database and also in the service itself. So we are very excited about the growth we are seeing. We're very excited about the interesting applications that customers are building on top of MariaDB, on top of the Microsoft Cloud.
And it's music to my ears because one of the key aspects of what the MariaDB Foundation is about adoption, and adoption on the cloud is great adoption. So you mentioned other open source databases. So how does your usage of MariaDB compare to Postgres and MySQL?
Yeah, Postgres and MySQL and MariaDB, the growth of all these databases has been pretty phenomenal. One of the things that we see is there's some interesting application patterns that are emerging in each of these databases. But we are a relatively new service. We've been generally available for developers for about 3 years now. And all open source databases are growing at a very fast pace. And that shows to tell you that how developers are betting on open source databases and also kind of moving to the cloud as well. So our hypothesis around open source and also the cloud, like cloud native application development, has been proven to be right.
Cool, that's good to hear. So what kind of feedback do you get from your users?
Yeah, it's a good question, Kai. We get a kind of a plethora of feedback, but if I were to kind of summarize in terms of the feedback that we get from MariaDB is one is around database features that developers would like to see, especially around things like parallel query plan, predicate pushdown. Those are some of the common things that I hear. The other next set of capabilities that I hear from developers that they want in MariaDB is around some of the security features, enterprise security features like dynamic data masking and features like that. And finally, it's more on the cloud piece, especially on the Azure side of things. Customers are increasingly asking us to provide Azure Active Directory authentication plugin. They're also asked for data encryption plugin using Azure Key Vault, which is our kind of a key store to hold certificates and other secrets. So those are the kind of the feedback that I hear from customers on things that they'd like to see in MariaDB.
So how do you set up MariaDB for the end users, like versions and upgrades and all of that?
Yeah, so as part of the Azure platform and platform as a service for MariaDB, one of the things that we offer for customers is obviously easy provisioning of MariaDB databases, being able to migrate their data, and also we provide automatic platform upgrades and version upgrades. Right. In fact, one of the things that customers do like about MariaDB is around the longer life cycle for major releases, right? Because customers don't want to upgrade, right? We see this with other databases, right? They want to upgrade to major versions only when they're comfortable and they feel good about the set of features that are coming for these major upgrades. So yeah, I think we provide upgrades for minor and major versions in the platform. And one of the things that we are also that customers ask for is being able to configure when and how they can apply some of these some of these upgrades, whether it's the database upgrade or the operating system upgrades as well.
So one of the characteristics of MariaDB server, if you compare it to other open source databases, is the storage engines. So they do exist in MySQL, but I believe they are now concentrating on InnoDB mostly, if not only, whereas there are several ones in MariaDB actively. So how does that work for you? Do you have several storage engines, and if so, what's their breakdown?
Yeah. So, Kai, for us, majority of the customers, I don't know, maybe because of, how their current applications are developed, we have majority of the customers running primarily on InnoDB, right? We do get requests from customers to support, MyRocks. Column store is gaining in popularity as well. That's because, interestingly, right, customers increasingly want to run both OLTP and OLAP style workloads on the database. So that's one of the reasons why column store is gaining popularity, where customers don't want to be in the business of building data pipelines and ETL the data, from a traditional, relational database to like a data warehouse style application. So that's why it's gaining in popularity as well. And we do get a few requests for ARIA as well. But predominantly, I would say Align, a huge share of customers, storage engine is InnoDB.
Cool, good to know. And also column store that you highlighted, column store. So those are sort of options when using MariaDB server, the storage engine. But there's other options as well as in plugins. So, and you mentioned security there. So there are security plugins and authentication plugins and whatnot. So do you offer any plugins as well?
Yeah, we do offer AuthZ plugins, right? Audit plugins essentially, okay, as part of the our service. But you're right though. I think the most popular plugin requests that we get are mostly around authentication and security related stuff, and also on authorization and then audit as well, are the three popular plugins requests that we get from customers.
So you, I was going to ask you what would you like MariaDB to do, but you already sort of answered that when I asked for what feedback you have from your users. So I won't ask that specific question, but instead going back to an earlier MariaDB server, MiniFest, we got actually from Microsoft and others the feedback when we asked the question: is it more important for us to put effort on fixing bugs or on adding new features? The answer we got was that's sort of the wrong question. It's not the only two possibilities. It's very much also about two other things which are sort of neither bug fixes nor new functionality. And one of them is performance, putting more effort into performance, and the other one is ease of use. So do you have any answer to the question, how could MariaDB server become easier to use, easier for end users or for you to set up?
Got it. It's a great question, Kai. So, you obviously mentioned, performance. I did point out earlier, like things like, parallel query plan and stuff like that. I keep hearing. On the simplicity piece, right, we do get all the time. And interestingly, we do get more of that because we are supporting a managed service in Azure for MariaDB as well. A few things that come up in my developer and customer conversations, right? One is around, while it's great that there's a lot of flexibility for MariaDB in terms of the storage engine, in terms of the plugins, right? It tends to get, for an average developer who maybe is not a database expert or a database enthusiast, right? One of the common feedback is, hey, can you simplify the choice of the storage engine and the plugins that I should be using, right? And it's an interesting feedback, right? Which is because I love the flexibility, but at the same time, I do get feedback from developers and customers saying that, hey, can you make it simpler? The thing also that I hear is, can we make the configurability of MariaDB a little bit more easier for an average developer? Like, for example, one of the common things that I hear from developers is, hey, look, our workloads are pretty constant. Like, there's a seasonality to these workloads. Like if I have an application, it can be, read heavy or write heavy or something in between, right? How do you help me better configure the various, configuration parameters for MariaDB to suit my workloads, right? So that's interestingly, we hear that. And in Azure, for our open source service, we have something called Azure Advisors. So one of the things that we are working on, and we have some of these where we give recommendations to customers, in terms of the configurations that they can take advantage of for MariaDB, right? So essentially, to summarize, right, customers are asking for more about dynamic and adaptive configuration. And I think, we hear that all the time. So to really answer your question, you're right that we do hear that, hey, make it simpler for developers, right? The flexibility is great, but make us to choose the choices that we make a little bit simpler, right? Is what I hear.
Good. And actually, there will be a discussion at the panel later on today about something we call, it's a bit of a pun, it's InnoDB buffer pool politeness. So the InnoDB buffer pool is, of course, a very technical concept, and politeness is a very non-IT term. And that one is about, I think, satisfying exactly what you were asking for, making stuff easier to configure so that the InnoDB buffer pool, which obviously is a part that's hard to configure, that it frees up memory if it's not used, and that it behaves properly if there's too little memory. So stay tuned for that one. And Sudhakar, I would very much like to hear your feedback on that debate then later on after we've had the panel.
Yeah, I'd love to check out that talk for sure. It sounds interesting.
Great. So now I have asked you mostly technical questions, and I will go for a what we could call political questions soon. But before we leave the domain of technical questions, what have I not asked? Is there anything of a technical nature that you wish to add?
Yeah, one thing I would love to add. I mean, we talked about a bunch of technical features. One thing that I did miss out is, you asked about kind of the developers and applications, right? One of the things that we see really a great trend developing, where increasingly customers are choosing MariaDB as the database of choice when they're migrating from Oracle database. Right?
Yes.
That comes increasing. In fact, we have some large customers running mission critical workloads who've recently migrated from Oracle to MariaDB. So that's something that's actually it's of course it's always been there, but increasingly I'm hearing more and more it come up in customer conversations. So that's something that I'm excited about as well, because of, with the flexibility and configurability that MariaDB has, we feel that we can meet the needs of a plethora of different Oracle workloads on top of MariaDB. And again, there are feature parity challenges and everything. I get all that. But that seems to be a popular destination of choice for Oracle migrations.
Excellent to know, and there we might need your help also in getting the word out that there is this Oracle compatibility mode and that you can run PL/SQL inside MariaDB, which you cannot do in obviously you cannot do it in MySQL. That wouldn't make any sense. They have Oracle for that, and I believe there's nothing really equivalent to it within at least the Postgres that's generally available as an open source product. But we do have that, and we have the core parts because we have users who have migrated all their, like big fintech companies. Our standard example is DBS Bank, and there are videos on that out on the web where they've done that, and we're adding more of that, our Oracle functionality. So your help at Microsoft is very helpful if you can get the word out. And of course, what's missing, we're keen to listen to that. But let that now conclude the technical part, and I'll move to what I described as a political question, and that's of course a bit of a tricky thing. So and it's also meant for the audience to get some interesting insights from you. So when it comes to cloud companies, we and cloud providers, we have a feeling, a sentiment inside MariaDB Foundation that the cloud providers are, of course, good members of the MariaDB ecosystem that increase the adoption, which is what we're about, but that the cloud providers extract considerable commercial value out of the MariaDB server software development. And the conclusion from our standpoint is that should mean that their contribution back to the ecosystem should reflect that. So do you concur with that thinking, or what's your overall feeling on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I do concur with your, with your statement, Kai. In Microsoft, we firmly believe that we want to, further our Microsoft's contribution to open source in general. Like, for example, Microsoft has the most number of, contributions in GitHub to open source than any other company in the world, right? And that's true with, whether it's Linux, Kubernetes, or some of the open source data services as well, right? So yeah, absolutely, we do. In fact, in my team, we have few committers for, other open source databases as well. And we're helping influence and help, the community, open source community for all open source databases. So yeah, absolutely agree. I think that's a fundamental principle on how we operate as well. And I know, I'm very happy to work with your help and the foundation's help to do the, little bit of help that we can do to help the MariaDB community. And hopefully we'll discuss more about that as well.
Sudhakar, that sounds great. So, and just to underline that the type of help that we directly channel in the foundation is of two kinds. One, of course, your contributions to the openness of MariaDB server, meaning your the type of pull requests that we get and which get added to the functionality of the server, and then of course your financial contribution as a sponsor to the foundation. So those would be the types of support that I think come very naturally for cloud providers, and I suppose you would concur, Sudhakar, on that one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Kai, as you know, in addition to the being part of the board and perhaps sponsoring some of the MariaDB conference events, right? One of the things that we spoke about is we have a couple of engineers on the team helping with Windows build machines, and also starting to work with the community in some patches, especially around proxy protocol and stuff like that. So expect to see more of that to come from Microsoft, in the future.
Excellent, Sudhakar. That's music to my ears. So very happy with your contribution also now for the MariaDB Server Cloud MiniFest. Any concluding words from your side, Sudhakar?
Firstly, I really appreciate the partnership, Kai, with the MariaDB Foundation. Very happy. Microsoft is very happy to be part of that. And of course, we've been working on some, things like, obviously, the getting the word out. But one of the things I would love to do is, share real customer stories with the community as well. Because as I mentioned, we've have some really large, customers, well-known, brand names that are betting on MariaDB and running large mission-critical workloads. I'd love to share, I want to partner with the foundation and share more of, how they're implementing their applications on MariaDB, including reference architectures and stuff like that. So I'm very excited about the partnership and looking forward for more.
Well, Sudhakar, thank you. So am I. I'm very much looking forward to more of that as well. It's great to work with you, and thank you for being here at the MariaDB Server Cloud MiniFest.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to the MiniFest, and thank you.
Thanks.